Our neighborhood always had a quiet grandeur on Christmas nights. Even when snow settled on the rooftops and the streets went silent and dark, the colored lights, the trees, the green wreaths and red flowers on doors, everything gave off a feeling of safety. But there was one house that was always different, the one across the street. An old building with peeling wooden siding, dark windows that looked like no one had cleaned them in years, and an empty porch where even the color of the dust never seemed to change. All the neighbors said the house had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. No one lived there, the power was cut off, the deed was tied up in some legal mess. That is, until the night of December 23rd, when I saw the first light coming from it. That evening, I was setting up the Christmas tree by the window. The view from our window looked straight into the yard across the street. As I was busy with it, I suddenly noticed something flash in the darkness over there. At first, I thought it was headlights from a car. But no, colored Christmas lights had come on around the windows of the house across the street. Lights that I was certain hadn't even existed before this year. I called out loudly, "Honey, can you come here?" Shanna came and stood beside me. Her eyes widened. "Who fixed it? Who turned the power back on?" I shrugged and said, "Maybe the owner came back for Christmas." I felt surprised, a little curious about who our new neighbors might be. And honestly, the suddenness of it all gave me a slight chill. Whatever it was, until that day, no one knew anything, and somehow no one had ever dared to go over and check. After dinner, I went back to satisfy my curiosity. The lights weren't just on, they were blinking, but not like ordinary lights with a steady rhythm. This was strange. I'm a sailor, and sometimes my crew and I send messages to each other that way. And that night, it felt like Morse code. It seemed like someone was sending a message with the lights. 4 flashes, pause, H, 1 flash, pause, E, 1 flash, 1 long, 3 flashes, L, and it just kept repeating. I stared at the lights for several minutes. My wife came and stood beside me, asking in surprise, "What are you looking at? Is someone there?" I said, "It's the pattern of the blinking." Right then, I felt like something was standing behind that dark window, something controlling all the flashing. When I looked again, there was nothing behind the window, just pure darkness. My wife asked with a worried face, "You mean someone's in there?" I said, "The message is just one sentence. WHELPUS. Help us." We looked at each other. A moment of terrifying silence filled the house. Shanna said, "This has to be a joke, right? No one's in that house. No one has lived there for years." That night, neither of us could sleep. In the middle of the night, I went to get water, and my eyes fell on the yard across the street again. The lights weren't blinking anymore, but this time, in the upstairs window, a shadow was standing, completely still, no movement. It was unnaturally tall. Its head was slightly tilted forward, as if it was staring straight at our house. Its hands? I couldn't see them, but I felt like it was holding something or hiding it behind its body. I froze. My breath caught. Suddenly, the lights blinked again and the shadow vanished. My wife decided to call the police. Lights in an abandoned house, coded messages, maybe someone was trapped inside. The police said a unit would come to check it out. We all gathered behind the window. The lights were still on, but no longer blinking, just steady glows and the terrifying silence of the house across the street. It was around 3 a.m. when the police arrived a few minutes later. Two officers got out of the car and entered the dark porch with flashlights. They forced the door open and went inside. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. 15 minutes passed, and no sound came from inside. No shouting, no radio chatter, not even footsteps. Just the beams of flashlights occasionally passing behind the dirty windows. Shanna whispered, "Is it normal for it to take this long?" I didn't answer. I couldn't take my eyes off the door of the house across the street. The wooden porch door slowly opened. One of the officers came out, not in a hurry, not scared, very normally. His hat was on, flashlight in hand, but the way he walked was strange, as if he'd forgotten why he was there in the first place. He stopped on the last step. For a few seconds, he just stared at the empty street. Then, very slowly, he raised his head and looked straight at our window. Not at the street, not at the patrol car, at us. My breath stopped. He was breathing heavily. His face was pale under the streetlight. His eyes were open but not focused, like someone awake but not really present. Shanna whispered, "Why is he staring at us?" The officer raised his hand to his radio, held it for a few seconds, then lowered it. He turned and went back inside the house. The door closed. Silence again. The minutes dragged. Another 5 minutes passed, then 10. The patrol car was still running. Its lights painted the street blue and red, but there was no movement. And then the door opened again. This time, both officers came out. They stood side by side, very close, no words, no gestures, just standing. Shanna gripped my arm tightly. She whispered, "Something's not right with them." The flashlight beams were still moving, but slower now, heavier. For a moment, both beams went out, then came back on. But this time, it felt less like searching, more like looking for the way out. About 20 minutes later, the front door opened. Both officers came out. Something about the way they moved wasn't right. No hurry, no calm. One of them had his hand clenched tightly around something, like a box. I couldn't see clearly in the dark. The other kept taking deep breaths, as if the air wasn't enough for him. Instead of getting in the car, they came straight toward our house. When I opened the door, they just stared at me for several seconds. One of them said, "Don't worry, there was no one there." I said, "Then the lights? The message?" He shook his head. "We didn't find anything." Then he paused, a short pause, but long enough. He said, "Just one strange thing." He glanced toward the house across the street. In the upstairs room, the one whose window faces yours, there was something, a locked door. It wasn't clear. It was locked. It didn't lead anywhere. He seemed unsure of what he'd seen. His sentences were broken. His words didn't add up. Shauna asked, "What was inside?" The officer said, "I don't know. We opened it, but when we went in, the air was very heavy, a strange smell, like sulfur." Then, as if he realized what he'd said, he quickly added, "But there was nothing else. No one is there anymore." Then, without saying goodbye, he turned toward the car. When they left, the lights of the house across the street went out, not blinking, not steady, complete darkness. That night, for the first time in a long while, we fell asleep. It was almost dawn. The sky still wasn't light when a sound came. Tap, tap, tap. from the window. I jolted awake, a dread with no clear reason. Slowly, I pulled the curtain aside. On my bedroom window, written with something like a finger, or perhaps from the inside, "They will return." A cold dread rose from deep inside me. What? Who will return? I didn't know what it meant or who had written it. I was only sure the writing was from the outside, and my bedroom is on the second floor.